The Denver Broncos are signing a former Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver with the team dealing with injuries at the position ahead of the AFC Championship game. According to Mike Klis of 9 News, the Broncos are signing wide receiver Brandon Johnson to the practice squad. Johnson is a familiar face for the Broncos, as he spent 2 seasons with the team in 2022 and 2023. In that span, Johnson appeared in 20 games, 3 starts, and posted 25 catches for 326 yards and 5 touchdowns. The signing comes amid the Broncos dealing with injuries at wide receiver. Johnson offers an insurance policy, as well as someone who is familiar with head coach Sean Payton's offense. Johnson had his best season as a pro under Payton, when he posted 19 catches for 284 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2023. Denver saw 3 wide receivers get banged up during their divisional round win over the Buffalo Bills. Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, and Pat Bryant all got hurt during the game, although Mims was able to finish out the contest, so he should be good to go for the AFC Championship game. Franklin exited early with a hamstring injury, while Bryant suffered his second concussion in less than a month. If those two can't go against the New England Patriots on Sunday, the Broncos will be down to 3 healthy receivers on their active roster in Mims, Courtland Sutton, and Lil Jordan Humphrey. Denver will release its first injury report of the week on Wednesday, so we'll know more about both players' statuses then. Big Ben is a believer in Will Howard. Pittsburgh Steelers legend Ben Roethlisberger spoke recently about what his former squad should do at the quarterback position in 2026 if Aaron Rodgers retires or doesn't return, and he's a Howard fan. Howard was a 6th-round draft pick by the Steelers in 2025. He began his college career at Kansas State and capped it with a national title in his final season with Ohio State. In 2025, Howard spent the majority of the season as QB3 in Pittsburgh behind Rodgers and Mason Rudolph. Roethlisberger wants Howard to get the starting job for 2026 if it's open, though. "I love his heart, his fire. I think he is Pittsburgh," Roethlisberger said, via Steelers Depot. "I think he's tough, he's gritty, he's going to get you what you want. Could be completely wrong, but I think you have a guy in there." Do I think Will Howard is a top 10 quarterback of all time, like by the time he's done? Maybe, probably not, Roethlisberger said. But that doesn't mean he can't be a top 5 guy in the league for numerous years. Or top 10 guy. And that guy can get you Super Bowls. Big Ben concludes by saying he thinks the Steelers should let Howard start for the next 2 or 3 seasons before potentially making a change. It's quite the bold take. This side of Tom Brady, QBs taken as late as Howard rarely amount to much. The Steelers almost certainly will look for some kind of veteran replacement for Rodgers until they can potentially draft a young quarterback much higher. Maybe Roethlisberger knows something that most of us don't, though, so it'll be interesting to see if Howard can factor in at some point. The 2026 offseason for the Pittsburgh Steelers is defined by uncertainty following the departure of head coach Mike Tomlin and a playoff exit. Insider Mike DeFabwa has suggested that the Houston Texans could be a surprising destination for veteran quarterback Aaron Rodgers, describing it as a potentially good marriage. While Rodgers led the Steelers to 10 wins and a division title, DeFabwa notes that Houston could offer a more stable defensive floor. Since C.J. Stroud struggled in the postseason and failed to build on his early momentum, the Texans might be intrigued by a veteran passer to make a title run now. This leaves Pittsburgh in a precarious position as they look to develop a new plan under center. In a recent mock draft for ESPN, analyst Mel Kiper Jr. opted to address the receiving core rather than the quarterback position. "I really wanted to get a quarterback to the Steelers in this spot," Kiper explained. "It's possible Ole Miss Trinidad Chambliss finds himself in the first-round conversation, obviously depending on what happens with his NCAA eligibility lawsuit. But the other QBs in this class would be big reaches. I don't know what Pittsburgh will do under center or whether Aaron Rodgers will play another season, but there doesn't appear to be an easy fix in round 1 this year. So, let's pivot to the rest of the offense and land a WR2 alongside DK Metcalf. We saw what happens when this offense loses Metcalf, as the Steelers managed just 1 passing touchdown over weeks 17 and 18 while Metcalf was suspended. But Boston runs strong routes and uses his physicality to box out defenders and make plays on the ball. He had 11 touchdowns this past season, including 7 in the red zone. He'd elevate the unit right out of the gate, and take some weight off Metcalf. This pivot in the draft comes as insiders fuel buzz regarding Rodgers potentially joining the Minnesota Vikings. DeFabo predicts there is a 35% chance Rodgers plays for the Vikings, especially given the discouraging performance of J.J. McCarthy, who threw 12 interceptions and struggled with accuracy in 2025. President Art Rooney, too, has emphasized that the quarterback position will be a major part of discussions with new coaching candidates, but the franchise faces a difficult road to stability. The Steelers are reportedly set to interview Pittsburgh native Mike McCarthy today for their head coach position, and Tom Pelissero is intrigued. Largely, that's because it bucks the trends the Steelers have built in their recent hires. The word recent there, of course, is pulling a lot of weight, spanning more than 55 years of recency. Pittsburgh is looking for a new head coach after Mike Tomlin resigned the day after the team's wild card round loss after 19 seasons. They hired him in 2007 and his predecessor, Bill Cowher, in 1992. Before that, Chuck Noll patrolled the sidelines since 1969. All three of them came from a defensive coaching background and had no prior experience as head coach, all also in their 30s. But three candidates over more than half a century does not a profile make. It's fun to create that narrative, but the sample size is entirely too small to be overly meaningful without context. But McCarthy is largely the opposite of these things that the Steelers have previously prioritized. Mike McCarthy, Pittsburgh native, Super Bowl winner, 12 out of 18 seasons he's gone to the playoffs. He's everything they haven't hired in the past, Tom Pelissero said on The Rich Eisen Show. Offensive background, been a head coach before, and he's 62 years old. They have very consistently hired 30-something, first-time defensive backgrounds. If you're thinking about this from the Steelers' perspective, and there are not a ton of candidates that fall into that bucket right now in terms of what you've always hired, McCarthy has a relationship with the GM, Omar Khan. McCarthy knows how to develop a quarterback. And don't discount that if Aaron Rodgers is ever going to play football again, the one person on the planet besides Mike Tomlin he might consider doing that with is Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy was born and bred in Pittsburgh, attending Bishop Boyle High School. While he relocated for college, soon after he returned and coached on the Pittsburgh Panthers staff for a few years. After that, he broke into the NFL ranks. While with the Saints in 2000 to 2004, McCarthy crossed paths with current Steelers GM Omar Khan and assistant GM Andy Weidel. McCarthy served as the Packers head coach for 13 seasons, defeating the Steelers in Super Bowl 45. Thanks to him and the Steelers quarterback in 2025, Aaron Rodgers, Pittsburgh is short a Lombardi. Could the duo help rectify that by partnering up in Pittsburgh in 2026? Doubtful, if we're introducing the slightest bit of realism into the conversation. But I don't think the fact that McCarthy's older, experienced, and from an offensive background has anything to do with it. But after sitting out the 2025 season, would he be interested in a coordinating role? He was an offensive coordinator for 6 years before earning the Packers head coach job. Mike McCarthy is just one of several candidates the Steelers are meeting with for their head coach job. They have already met face-to-face with Brian Flores, who also has head coach experience and was previously on their staff. They're set to meet with Anthony Weaver on Friday. They have also had virtual meetings with Nate Scheelhaase, Chris Shula, Jesse Minter, Jeff Hafley, Clay Kubiak, and Ejiro Evero. Most of them fit the young, defensive-minded up-and-comer mold. But not all of them.